Hi everyone, it's Tanya and I'm here today with Alexa. Today we're going to discuss something that Alexa knows pretty well, setting up and maintaining healthy partnerships. Say hi.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
All right, so before we get started, I just want to go ahead and do the quick rundown. First, Alexa's going to quickly share Alexa's going to share with us her background on doing partnerships and joint ventures. And then we'll talk a little bit about partnerships and what the best and worst practices are. And we'll also do that with around joint ventures. And then last but not quite so least, we're going to jump into a case, basically a case that's very similar to what many of you are experiencing in your small businesses. And then to wrap it up, we will go ahead and give Alexa a chance to give any last minute thoughts. Sound good?
Awesome.
All right. Great. Alexa, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with partnerships and joint ventures?
Yeah, of course. So I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2012. I kind of took a leap of faith and went and worked at a startup that focused on pairing early stage tech startups with big brands. The company was called Evolution. At that point in time, I had no idea what a startup was, much less what an entrepreneur was or what technology really meant in the space that it was. This was, 5.5 years ago. And so I just kind of said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm young, I can. And I ended up falling in love with partnerships and just in general of kind of leveraging early stage entrepreneurs and bringing them to bigger companies to help them kind of further themselves. And so ever since then, I took myself through a handful of different startup companies where I worked kind of client side, I worked agency side, and that's kind of where I'm at now, where I am the partnerships lead at Gray Adventures. So Gray is actually a large advertising agency in New York City. It's probably one of the biggest that you know. We've been around for about 100 years. And what we're really trying to do is give our clients access to unbelievable opportunities and particularly focus on creating new products and services for generating revenue streams for not only Gray, but also for the brands. And so kind of what I've always found to be unbelievably important is creating synergies. I think like there's something about just that innate nature between humans in general of how we want to connect with one another. And that kind of applies toward businesses as well. And so anybody who's an entrepreneur and wants to work with, different brands, enterprises, etc., there's a way to create that connection. And it's kind of something that I've fallen in love with, if you could say, and what I like to do today.
Awesome. All right. So already got a little bit of a tidbit into your world, but can you explain to us what in the world a partnership is, what a joint venture is?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of different ways of looking at this, right? So when startups come out into the market and they're trying to kind of garner more awareness, they look toward launch partners that can basically test their program or their platform for proof of concepts and ultimately give them tidbits into kind of how they can improve their product, how they can reach general mass, how they can scale, how they can generate more revenue. And so what I personally focus on now is really identifying ways that we can create new products and service lines for our brands and leverage, potential technology partnerships, but in particular, it's really creating a joint venture. So a joint venture means something where you're willing to kind of give up skin in the game in the upfront for a larger return in the back end, right? So we look at that more of like a revenue share deal where it's kind of saying, all right, we're going to go ahead and put our creative talent, our strategy talent in the upfront and say, hey, this is for you to go ahead and take, but we're actually going to take a cut out of that deal, right? So if we take really easy numbers, it's like if you make $100 on a sale and somebody decides to take $2 out of that and we take it, that's a joint a joint deal, right? You can look at it kind of like how Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank operates, or he's always like, I'm going to take X and get royalties, on this for the next 5 years. It's similar things like that, where you really bring the finance, but the art of creatively bringing something to market, which benefits both parties.
Awesome. All right. So when someone's sitting there and they're thinking about doing a joint venture or they're thinking about a partnership, what are some of the best practices they can do before even starting to get involved in one? And then once they start that conversation, making sure that it follows through.
Sure. So a couple of things to that as well. First off, I think it does come in a certain stage, right? That startups and just overall entrepreneurs are prepared for these type of partnerships. And a lot of that comes from knowing your numbers, but also just understanding your vision and kind of like, what are you looking to create? But more importantly, in your mind, what is an ideal partner? And that's something that I say to all the startups that I've ever mentored and kind of coached before is, there are tons of brands out there that are all within the same vertical. Let's say a beauty, a retail, a sports vertical. And it's kind of like, how do you differentiate and decide to yourself that's the type of partner that you handle? That you deal with, right? And so it's like, what does that brand or partner stand for? What does the team look like on that partnership side? At least for me personally, I look at it from a partnership perspective of interviewing the entrepreneur just as much as I am interviewing the quote unquote brand, of kind of like, how lean forward is this person? How willing are they to make risks and, to work together as a unit, instead of worrying constantly about, hitting every single KPI, key performance indicator of what they're looking to do for a specific campaign, right? So brands and startups in general think completely differently. And my kind of job is to sit in the middle of that and figure out how we communicate these almost like separate languages and bring them together into unison.
Got it. Okay. So that said, let's flip to the other side of that conversation. What are some of the worst things that someone can do when going into a partnership? Or, if that's hard, give me a classic crash and burn situation that you've seen.
So, just being an asshole. I don't know if I can like curse, right? But like, there's a level of professionalism and kind of emotional IQ that's crucial. But being so closed off that you're not open to hearing kind of the challenges that your partner is experiencing and how potentially your solution as an entrepreneur can solve that challenge is really difficult. I think it's an interesting line that founders need to balance, where a lot of times people stay so attached to your vision that you're like head down in everything that you're doing. But if you're so head down that you can't actually hear what your customers are saying and kind of what's going on around in your environment, it's actually a detriment, at least thus far that I've ever seen. And I think the other thing is just not really studying the rest of what's going on in the world, right? So I personally am kind of obsessed with research and understanding a topic to the fullest extent that I possibly can. And I think lots of founders look at topics, but they get so dead set on an idea that they forget about how to kind of explore the rest of the opportunities, but also how to learn how to pivot, because like things happen and larger companies come out with a product similar to yours. So how do you pivot? It's all very much a trust that you will make it to the right step for your journey with your partner and or without your partner. But it's an interesting like wall to have to balance between, because not everyone's comfortable, I guess you could say, in doing that.
Love it. All right. So before I switch into my next set of questions, just a little bit of context. So a lot of people who will be watching this are, entrepreneurs, or they work in a small business, or they're just that pinch hitter on their team. So often when they're looking at things like this, it might be the first or second time they're doing something. So they're coming to this fresh. Would love to know from you your thoughts about, well, if they need to learn about this uh, part of business and they need to do it so quickly, what are some resources they can look at to get up to speed pretty quickly about partnerships and some good examples of partnerships that have succeeded?
Sure. So first off, like, let me Google that for you, because I use Google for everything. So just like go to the internet and I literally just put things in and I find unbelievable articles from that, right? So that's like, haha, easy thing to do. The other is honestly network. I mean, seriously, there's one thing about developing partnerships, and I think for a long time, and I'm still very young in my career, but I think for a long time, even years ago, I thought that I personally needed to have the network that would get us to the next step way, right? I think it's there's something really valuable in harnessing the fact that your network is still a matter of kind of the ripple effect that you have within an open network. So I don't need to have the direct connection, but this person has the connection to this person who has the connection to this person, and learning how to leverage that. And more importantly, just being open to asking for help. I think a lot of times at least our generation now, are kind of bullish on being like, I need to have all of the answers at this immediate moment and know exactly what my vision is and my purpose in life and this, that, and the other thing. And the reality is, you actually learn a lot more about those major stepping stones through speaking to other people, and more importantly, speaking to people that you wouldn't necessarily think would give you an answer, right? So maybe it's a different demographic, maybe it's a different, age bracket, maybe it's a different complete industry, right? It's just kind of being open to those conversations. So I think networking without question is crucial. And as people learn how to quote unquote network, they'll recognize kind of how to delineate between really great places to network and not so much, right? So I think you'll start going to, I at least personally have gone to more events and tried different things. And I say, you know what, this worked really well, this didn't work really well, and kind of improve for the future. But the reality is that there's nothing more important than kind of connecting with other humans and other just individuals in the industry. And more than anything, just being willing to ask. I'll never forget, my dad taught me my senior year of college, when I really did not want to write a 10-page paper for a class that I was pass failing. He's like, you know what, Lexi, you don't ask, you don't get. And I was like, all right. So I went and I asked the professor, hey, listen, it's my senior year, I'm pass failing this course. I've already done really well. I don't know this paper is going to make or break whether or not I pass this course. Are you cool with me just kind of handing in half of it, or maybe not at all? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. I'll see you at some other point. And that's just sort of you don't ask, you don't get. It's the same thing for, anything in your life that you're looking to do. Don't ask, you don't get.
Oh, I love that. Also, I wish I knew your dad in my senior year.
I know. I don't know why you told me that. Sometimes I look back at it and I'm like, really? Why did you say that? But now that I look at it, it wasn't about getting out of the paper, right? Or just in general. It was more of like facing up to authority, to a figure that you thought would automatically say no because they're supposed to say no to everything. And I think it's just kind of really mustering up that confidence that a lot of people have not necessarily faced, until maybe after college in the real world when they're adulting. And the reality is that really, I mean, you don't ask, you don't get. And that's kind of the same thing of, if you want a partnership to happen, or, you want to work with someone, or not even a partnership from a revenue standpoint, right? But if you want someone to mentor you, you got to ask, or you got to ask somebody who's going to have the direct line to that person. If you don't ask, it's never going to happen.
Got it. Love it. And then you spoke about networking and that being very important. Do you have any good tips on how to find good networking events, or just even start to find networking events that are related to you?
So totally. So first off, a couple of different things. New York Tech Meetup, I think for anyone who's involved in like the New York tech scene is an amazing event just to go attend. It's run in the same structure. So I personally don't go anymore just because it's kind of the same old, but it's a really great place to see different companies pitch and kind of what they do when they demo their companies. So that's great. The other is really taking a look at the lineup of panelists and kind of sometimes events even list who they're hoping will attend. And then once again, kind of find somebody in your network that's going to take you under their wing to say, this is a really great event for you to go to, or like, this is a really great event for you to go to. And I think as you get more and more involved and more comfortable with it, you'll start networking at like volunteer events that you go to, or like, with coworkers who even knows. It's just kind of one of those. I have a mentee. I took her to an event to me and I kind of just stood behind her and literally pushed her into the crowd and was like, go figure it out. And that's sort of how it works in a way. It's like throw yourself into the lion's den and figure what works for you and what doesn't. I will say a couple of really ridiculous tidbits that I've thought of before. The first is always bring your business cards to the bathroom. Whenever there are events, there are usually lines in the bathroom, and you'd be very surprised who you can meet online at the bathroom when you're like waiting, and not even the bathroom, by the way. It could be like a coffee line. But anywhere where there's lines, people usually are willing to turn around to the person next to them and say, hey, what do you think so far? Blah, blah. And it just kind of gets you into a conversation. So always have your business cards when you're in those environments.
I love it. I have to say we're very kindred spirits on that. I take any opportunity to sort of, first connect with somebody and then say, we should follow up, we should get coffee. And
Absolutely.
Usually it turns into a great connection.
Absolutely.
All right. So on to my favorite part, partially because I'm a business school student or business school grad. And so I love cases. The case today is around obviously building partnerships. In this case, imagine a company. It's, a disruptive company within the food space, and they figured out that their ideal partners might just be the very people they'll disrupt, which are grocery stores. In this case, let's call our person Casey. She's got to figure out how to start building relationships with those grocery stores. Can you walk us through what type of steps you would take in order to build these relationships and how much time you would give yourself to, start doing things?
Okay, so super difficult question. And I think without question, by the way, partnerships are kind of case by case, right? There's no like blanket, this is an excellent formula. I wish there were a formulaic process for identifying all those people, right? But at the immediate moment, at least I have not personally found something. Number one, do your research, right? So if I were this Casey woman or man, because I guess that's, a gender neutral name, I would go and do as much research as I can. So like go into all of my competitors or, my quote unquote competitors, meaning all the grocery stores, understand the nuances, really look at like who else is in my space and trying to disrupt the grocery industry, which by the way, great example, because it's definitely happening all over the place. And it's sort of like, who's going to actually take the lead on this. So go do the research. And I'm talking like on the ground research, talk to people, post on your Facebook, being like, I want to, speak to different people, buy people a cup of coffee just to talk to them for 30 minutes about what they think about grocery shopping, right? Because I bet you all generations are going to have different, feelings on grocery shopping, right? So do all of that. Then you kind of sit down and you say, okay, based on all this research I've garnered that, X, Y, and Z are the major insights, and that this is really where there's a huge kind of white space in the market that I could potentially disrupt. right? Now you say to yourself, okay, is there a way that, am I disrupting, or am I actually acting as a complement to some of these larger institutions that have the scale and kind of the reach that I don't, right? So it's identifying really what business are you in, right? And I feel like everyone a lot of times are saying, oh, I'm just going to destroy these major industries. But the reality is that a lot of these industries have been around for a long time, and they have some insights and research and understanding that some of these smaller companies won't necessarily have, right? So it's like, can I use that to my advantage and actually partner with it and make a better company out of that and provide, a complementary service or product? Or is it something that I'm going to just wipe out these or hope to wipe out the competition and that's it? Then really, again, this may not be, it's never a linear process. So you ever seen that meme of like success? We all think success goes like this, but success is really like no one can actually prove it, right? So this is not a direct path, right? But then it's, who has connections at those groups that you're looking to partner with and or disrupt, whatever it may be. And how can you get in touch with them? How can you sit down and have a conversation? And really, could they, again, be someone that you collaborate with and partner with to build something new? Or is it someone that you're really just kind of tapping in for information? I think it's unfortunately a difficult line to figure out where you're kind of drawing that line in the sand. But all the more reason to be attached to whatever your vision is, if we look at, though, for example, right, like, I think Dollar Shave Club, came out to disrupt the razor industry, but they've been acquired by Unilever, because Unilever said, you know what, we're actually better working together than, or kind of like leveraging one another than we are competing against one another and worrying about each other. So, yeah, I would say that's like, if you could get to that point, good for you. And then it's time to really like engage the right people who, have that sales and just kind of storytelling background of helping your partner to understand what is the benefit and why of working together, and a background that I don't necessarily have, but like a finance background of figuring out exactly what that partnership maps out to be from the financial standpoint.
Great. I love it. I'm also making mental notes of some ideas that I've wanted to test out recently. I'm like, I'm going to go do all of those things you just said. All right. Great. Before we wrap up, any thoughts?
LinkedIn me, Facebook me. I don't really care.
Well, that wraps everything up. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in again. And of course, Alexa, it was great speaking with you. You dropped a lot of insight and a lot of actionable advice. That is huge. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.